Welcome to Real Talk with the Vagina Docs, where we break down the P's of pelvic health: pooping, peeing, pregnancy, postpartum, prolapse, pain, pleasure, and physical activity. I'm Dr. Jocelyn Conley, pelvic floor physical therapist.
And I'm Dr. Jordan, chiropractor and functional medicine expert, and together, we're the Vagina Docs.
Let's dive in. Thank you so much for coming on Real Talk with the Vagina Docs. Kaitlin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jocelyn. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you so much for agreeing to take the time. Let's cut to the chase. What every new mom wants to know: what is it like having a baby?
Oh my God.
Let's start from the beginning. Let's start with major changes. Skip the first part of the pregnancy because we'll talk about that if we have time towards the end. But whenever you're toward the finish line, let's start there.
Yeah, let me start with, you're never as close as you want to be. It is really hard at the end. It is really, really hard. Those last couple weeks feel like a couple trimesters of pregnancy because you are so pregnant and you've been waiting so long to meet your baby, and you might be so uncomfortable. You might feel good, but it doesn't matter. It's not fun. And you're just so excited to get to the finish line. So for me, I would say the biggest thing for me in the week, let's say the week I went into labor, I lost parts of my mucus plug a couple times. And I also had just an increase of Braxton Hicks. So Braxton Hicks, usually women have them throughout their whole pregnancies. Mine were happening every single day pretty often. I was never having uterine cramping like a lot of women do before they go into labor. I also didn't have any blood at all. I'm trying to remember what other women experience like close to birth. But for me, I wasn't experiencing anything. I never felt the baby drop. I felt pressure, but I had been feeling pressure for the last 4 weeks. My walk changed in the last couple weeks because the baby, I think, dropped, but I didn't look like it dropped, didn't feel like it dropped. There was just pressure down there, and it was just constant all the time. So, the day I went into labor was actually Labor Day, and I went about my day as normal. I woke up, I went to the gym, I lifted weights, I lifted heavy. I did not know I was going into labor. We think I went into labor around 3 p.m. I remember being at my mom's house late that afternoon and telling her, "Mom, I'm having a lot of Braxton Hicks today, and they're really uncomfortable. I have to stop." And I was having to catch my breath through these Braxton Hicks contractions, which was interesting because I'd had them my whole pregnancy. So you just go about your day. You don't even really realize it. It's just kind of part of the end of pregnancy. You don't feel good. You just kind of deal with it kind of thing. So I've been in labor for probably a couple hours before I was like, I wonder if this is what labor feels like, because I never had, or until that point, I hadn't had real contractions yet. I just had Braxton Hicks, which were constant. I would have them for minutes at a time, and I didn't have a good break in between. So I remember complaining to my mom that afternoon that I didn't feel that great. And then I went home, and I remember thinking, contractions are timeable and measurable. So I'm going to just time these Braxton Hicks and see if they're contractions. So I start timing them. There wasn't any real pattern. And I called my midwife and I said, "Morgan," I said, oh no, I didn't call her. I texted her. I said, "Hey, just want you to know I've been having Braxton Hicks contractions all day long. Definitely not contractions, definitely not the real thing, but I just wanted you to know." Because she's like, "If anything changes, let me know." So she texted me and she's like, "I'm going to call you in 5 minutes." So she calls me and she's like, "Hey, Kaitlin, how do you know you're not having contractions?" So I was like, "Well, I'm not having any pain." I'm like, "There's tightness. I feel uncomfortable." And I sent her a screenshot of, the timing of them. And I was like, "I'm not in labor. There's no way," because I was so committed to going to 42 weeks, which sounds crazy. But I knew that as a first-time mom, I most likely would be going late. And I thought to myself, if I just had the date of 42 in my brain, it's going to be that date. So I didn't think at 41 weeks, which is when I had my baby, I was in labor. So anyway, she was like, "How do you know these aren't contractions?" And I was like, they're just not. So anyway, long story short, I'm getting really uncomfortable. I get in the tub. The running water is helping. I'm starting to moan through contractions. Jeff calls my midwife and is like, hey, and she's like, is Kaitlin in labor? And he was like, yeah, she's in the tub. And she was like, I knew it. I'll be over in an hour. So she came over, my doula came over, they both checked me. She said, Kaitlin, take a Benadryl and go to sleep. And I was like, what? I am in labor. What's going on? Is this a detail you want? Should I keep going with this story?
Yeah, keep going. I'm like on the edge of my seat.
I don't know. I can't even remember the question you asked me. I love talking about my home birth, so I could do a whole hour of this, but we're not going to do that. Anyway, they come over at midnight. She checks me out, takes my blood pressure, makes sure I'm feeling okay. And she says, Kaitlin, take a Benadryl and go to bed. And I'm like, what? Take a Benadryl and go to bed? I haven't taken any pharmaceuticals or over the counter anything my entire pregnancy. I'm like, very more of like the natural organic mindset and things. So I'm like, a Benadryl? What, you want me to kill my baby? Which is like so absurd and like dramatic, right? Anyway, she was like, it's going to be a long one and you need to get some rest. Take a Benadryl, try and get some rest. So I'm like, okay. So I take a Benadryl and I had contractions all night long, every 3 minutes, didn't get a wink of sleep. And I heard my husband snoring in between contractions. And then I would just moan through them and he would wake up every time and like pat me or rub me or help me kind of like deal with the pain. So, and then that carried through the morning. She came back at 6 a.m. and I labored all day until 3 p.m. And then I had my baby and it was amazing. It was the best thing ever. I want to do it again.
I have so many questions, but let's
Great.
start. Let's start from the back when you had mentioned you felt pressure. Okay, so what, and I know like just a disclaimer to anyone listening, everyone feels and perceives things very differently, but it's just, I'm a person who teaches people to connect with their bodies. So I want the details on what did that pressure feel like? Whenever you're ovulating and that, or maybe you don't experience this, but like, or right before your period when there's just like more pressure down there, is it like that kind of pressure? Or is it like you feel like you have a big poop that needs to come out? Like, what does the pressure feel like before you're in labor?
Well, I mean, it happened weeks before I was in labor, right? I mean, I had that pressure, I would say, I mean, it starts earlier on, but then I would say like 2 weeks before I went into labor, it got significantly worse where you can feel the tension in the tissue. Like if I touched down there between my vagina and my anus, that tissue was, I remember telling you about it. Yeah. I was like, dude, feels like when I walk, feels like I have a baseball between my legs. And like, if I touch down there, the tissue is like swollen. I was like, this is crazy. Yeah. Because there was no pain associated with it. And I was still like having bowel movements just fine. I mean, quote unquote, having bowel movements just fine. The biggest lie in the whole world is like, you'll poop during pregnancy. It's the worst thing ever. Everyone's constipated. If you're pregnant right now and listen to this, I'm so sorry that you're not pooping a lot. I feel for you. I was there. The best thing about giving birth is that you have a baby and you get to poop regularly again. That's a tangent. But yeah, that's what it feels like. Baseball between the legs. You can literally feel the tension in the tissue.
Would you say there was anything that you could do to alleviate that tension after you got to a certain point? So like 38 weeks on or 40 weeks on, like that point where, you had tension, it was pressure, and then it just like jumped up a notch. Is there anything that you did that alleviated it, like supported the tissue or anything like that? Definitely individual to everyone. I'm a I personally would tell people for perineal support if it's to the point like they can't handle it, or even just for comfort. This wasn't something that you and I necessarily talked about. You didn't have any issues. We may talked about it earlier on.
So that's why I can't answer your question, because I'm trying to remember. I know I saw you in the weeks, like 36 weeks and on pregnant, but I don't think that was one of my biggest problems. So I don't think that you did any work internal to help with that, because it wasn't a source of stress for me. It was just kind of like, man, I'm so huge. This is just part of it kind of thing. The heartburn was the worst thing. So I had to manage that. The pressure was fine. But for a lot of women, I think it's just going to be different. You have to figure out what helps. Is it going to be walking every day? Because for me, I walked less than a half a mile every single day, or probably every single day, 3 days a week. And that was like the most walking I did, because walking was uncomfortable for me. I lifted weights 5 days a week though. But like, they don't tell you to do that. So if you're listening to this, do what makes you feel good, because there's no way around it. Like at the very end, you need to do things that relieve stress, and you need to do things that like keep you going and keep you optimistic, because that's going to bring your baby.
Such good advice. And that's so true. And like when I see people in the clinic, like you had gone, like your pelvic floor kind of fluctuated throughout your pregnancy, but I'll have some people come in and they are so tight. When a tight muscle is so taut, that's going to feel a lot different in regards to pressure than what, say, you experienced, Kaitlin. And
Mhm.
typically that it also is perceived as pain in the front side near the pubic bone or in the tailbone or somewhere else. Fortunately, unfortunately, we all have like different things that come up, but I didn't have to work tirelessly to get your pelvic floor at an optimal mobility for your delivery. But I'm glad you brought up walking wasn't comfortable for you. And so that wasn't necessarily your mode of exercise, but I would say that's really probably the number one activity that moms do. And I'm always just like, I do what you can to be active, but I'm definitely, if people are comfortable weight training, much more like do this. If you're going to pick two, do more of the weight training than the walking, given the amount of impact and stress that certain people's gait pattern has on their body. Like a lot of people don't know how to walk, or they don't have the stability to walk. I'm teaching a group fitness or a group core reconnect class right now, and it's like breaking down the basics of walking. And it's amazing how people don't have that prerequisite stability going into their pregnancy, and they wonder why they feel what they feel, but their primary mode of training or staying active is walking.
I don't think you can make recommendations blindly for a population that's so diverse, right? I mean, we
Sure.
can't make blanket statements. And so the 50,000-year-old recommendation of like walk 3 miles a day your whole pregnancy and you'll be healthy. It's like, that's not healthy for so many. Like, I'm an athlete and that wasn't healthy for me. It didn't feel good. It didn't like hurt my joints, but it did not feel good and I didn't do it. But when you're looking at things and you're looking at walking and you're looking at lifting weights, you're like, oh, wow, I bet lifting weights is so hard on the body. Oh, I think that that's going to be so tough. Oh, women shouldn't lift weights when they're pregnant. Well, if you're using slow and controlled movements or not, you could be doing CrossFit, doing powerlifting quickly if you're a professional, if you know what you're doing in a safe way during pregnancy. It's how you're loading that tissue and how your joints are working. So for me, I was always doing unilateral exercises. So that's single-handed or single-footed, because that was allowing me to like really engage my core. It was allowing my knees to be open and my hips wide, because I couldn't do certain stuff like bilaterally with 2 legs at once. And it was so healthy for my mind, because I was still doing what I love to do. And that is the biggest thing for me. Seeing you as my pelvic floor therapist, like the biggest thing when I tell everybody is if you're going to do one thing, don't bounce on a birthing ball for 9 months. Don't take red raspberry leaf capsules. I mean, but don't only just do that. Hire a pelvic floor therapist, because that's your key. Like, don't do anything but that, and you're going to do better than if you picked one out of a bunch of other things. So why was I on that tangent? So do that pelvic floor therapy. That helped so much during my, so the biggest thing I tell people is that seeing you allowed me to maintain my activities of daily living, so that when you're pregnant, like you lose so much. Like you have this whole identity crisis. You lose things left and right. You're like not even who you are. Then you have a baby and you're like even less than who you were before. And it's the most amazing thing, because motherhood's wonderful, but seeing you helped me maintain the things that like made me. So I hiked camelback until I was 30 weeks pregnant, and I lifted weights until the day I went into labor. And it was only because I saw you, because you were helping me release the tissues internally. Like you were helping me manage the pain I was feeling and making it go away. You weren't just managing it, like you helped it disappear. Poof. Anyway, there's my testimonial. Podcast over. Just kidding, guys. We got another hour of this crap.
I do want to talk more about your journey with pelvic PT and how you like a lot of people just don't know about it. And so when they hear about it the first time, they're just like, eh. But so we'll get to that. But I want to go back to your birth story.
Okay, sorry. I get excited.
I know you have just so much animation too, and it's so entertaining to get to chat with you. But so tell us about now. Okay, you had the pressure in the last 4 weeks of your pregnancy or however long it was. And then when you started to have the Braxton Hicks contractions all day, what was the difference between the pressure that you were feeling and then the pressure and the Braxton Hicks contractions when you called your midwife?
The pressure was the same. The pressure didn't get worse at the end. It was just exactly the same. It was like one of those things where you don't think about it. Once you've had it for a couple of days, it just like goes away. You know, it's just there. You don't even realize it's part of you. The reason I called her was because I don't know. I guess I intuitively knew I was in labor, but I was double guessing myself because I was like, no, I'm a first time mom. I could go to 42 weeks and you need to be patient, Kaitlin. So that's what I was telling myself. But I texted her because I timed them and I just like double guessed myself. I was thinking, Kaitlin, why are you timing these Braxton Hicks contractions if they're not the real thing? I was like, well, I'm proving to myself that they're not the real thing. And then I'm looking at the spreadsheet and I'm like, see, I'm like, some of them are 90 seconds apart and some of them are 3 minutes apart. So there's no way that's a contraction. Well, it was a contraction. And then some women, I mean, they have contractions for, like, I have a girlfriend who just is a total warrior. She's amazing. She just had her baby at home naturally. She had cramps. Like she had actual painful contractions for like 2 weeks leading into giving birth at home. And then she had her baby in with 2 hours of labor. If you've had a baby before, you know that that's like torpedo speed labor. And she's a thug and I love her to death. Anyway, tangent. It's my point is that it's different for everyone. And for me, it was Braxton Hicks and it was a lot of them. It was like they didn't stop. Like that was it. They didn't stop. So I was like, let me time these. And then Morgan called me and she thought I was in labor. So there you go.
Did you ever experience your water breaking? Like, was there an obvious
Yes.
point?
My labor was 24 hours. We believe my labor was not so long. That's pretty average for a first time mom, but we think I got stuck in labor because my water bags were bulging and they wouldn't break. So if I'm not mistaken, I mean, I was in labor land, so I'm like in another dimension, right? But if I am remembering correctly, I think my water broke about 3 or 4 hours before I delivered the baby. And it was with the help of my doula, who during contractions was helping to rotate me and move me in this like singular pattern. And she was able to help break my waters because they just got stuck. My midwife actually, that was one thing. She actually offered an intervention during my labor. She offered to break my waters because she was worried I was going to fatigue out because I had been in labor for 20 hours at that point. And she was worried and she was like, look, I can break your waters. There is a risk for this. There's a risk for this. And it's going to get a lot more painful without your waters intact, but it's going to speed up your labor and we won't need to transfer you if you fatigue out or if, et cetera, et cetera. So between contractions, she was explaining this all to me and I said, nope, I'm not doing it. And luckily everything was fine and baby came. But my waters did not want to break, but they did finally.
And when it broke on its own, did it get more painful? Was Morgan accurate?
I think things sped up because you're just dilating it more and more and more and more towards the end. So I don't know. It's hard to say. It's like, were the first contractions more painful than the last contractions? It doesn't matter. It's just one more rep, I think that they were. Yeah, I think that like when you're having contractions at 9 centimeters dilated versus 4 centimeters dilated, I think I wouldn't say they're more painful. They're stronger and more intense. So pain is a funny word. I don't really like to use it, but yeah, they're definitely more strong.
I like that word. I don't mean to go backwards, but a question that I get is, how do you know your mucus plug is
This is a good
his
question. I didn't know the answer to this question because I had never been pregnant before. I had pieces of my mucus plug come out 2 or 3 times in the week before the week I went into labor. And I was like, oh, darn, that's not my mucus plug. But what I've been told is that it looks like a jellyfish. And it's just this weird looking thing. And you'll know, like you will know when your mucus plug comes off or it comes out. So for me, it just like looked like a little white piece of like, I don't know, kind of like if you go get sushi, what's a white fish? Yeah, is yellowtail white? Yellowtail's kind of white. Kind of looks like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to look at sushi the same way.
I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry for everyone. I love sushi.
So anything else in those final weeks of pregnancy before you went into labor that you didn't know, that you're like, oh, I wish I would have known that this would happen, or I had such a different idea? I mean, it sounds like what going into labor feels like. You know, it wasn't this obvious thing for you.
No.
So you may, I mean, for people who are listening, they may be similar to you. They may have a completely different experience, right?
Yeah. I mean, movies depict women going to labor where their water breaks first and they rush to the hospital and have a baby. That's not how it happens. Like, that's not how it happens. But that does happen in some cases. So it's just going to be different. I don't think there's anything else, really.
What about the swelling? Like, what were you surprised how swollen your vulva was towards the end of your pregnancy? Was that something that you knew about?
I remember texting you and I was like, is this okay? And is this going to like go back to normal? Because it was so weird. It was like, it was like someone just like hit me with a baseball bat and it was like swollen. It didn't hurt. It's just the weird pressure feeling. So yeah, I can confirm everything is back to normal. We're feeling good, looking good. And as your body changes, the female body is amazing. Women run the world like hands down, but the female body is incredible. It's incredible. It just makes the baby all on its own. You don't have to go to a doctor. Right. You don't need to give it instructions. It's literally just like, here's 2 ears, 2 eyeballs, blood, organs, more tissues. And then he comes out with fingernails. And you're like, how did I make fingernails? It's so amazing. And then your body returns back. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's really a miracle. And I just wonder how women, women have made progress in the last several decades, but I just wonder where we will be as a collective in like 100 years. So back to the birth, pushing. So here's the deal. You are part of the small collective that I see that came in and you knew how to push. And whenever I say pushing is not what we think of from the movies. The movies or Hollywood has freaking ruined so many things. Sex, having babies, like, don't go off by that. But that is not pushing. Essentially, when I say pushing, it's relaxing your pelvic floor. Like, you knew how to drop and elongate your pelvic floor early on. So I don't even know if it's even the right way of going about it. Like, you didn't follow the necessary coaching that some of other people that I work with need. You do it right, as opposed to other people, they tense up and they do what the movies depict. So tell us about that. Did you just breathe the baby out, or did you have to do, the push, even though you didn't do the movie push, you did the right push, or you know what I mean?
This is a good question. The pushing stage was my favorite stage because it felt so good to finally push, because the whole labor and delivery, or the whole labor, you're just asked to like surrender and to breathe and to open up and to relax. And you're like, this is literally the most stress that's ever been put on my body ever. And you want me to relax through this? And especially like being an athlete and lifting weights and doing all these things, it's tough to just be like, yeah, I'll just like sit back, put my feet up and just be a goddess through this contraction. No, I want to like muscle through it. Well, you can't do that. So anyway, when it came time to push, it was great because I was like, I can finally do something here. So I pushed for 30 minutes. Baby came flying out. Leading into the pushing phase, I thought I was going to breathe this baby out. I was like, your body is going to do this for you. It's going to be beautiful. Every contraction, the baby's closer to you. I think everything is going well, but I really think I'm going to breathe this baby out, right? I mean, listen, you like paraplegics deliver babies naturally, and it's because their body knows the way. And it's uterine contractions. And yet we're medicalizing birth in America by sending people to the hospital, giving them all these drugs and doing all these things and getting all these interventions in the way of what we're naturally made to do. And I'm not saying there isn't a time and place for medicine, because there is. I'm glad we have the medical system, but we don't need to medicalize every single birth. Birth is not a medical event. It's not. It doesn't need to be, I guess. And I'm sorry, can we do the disclaimer of me pissing off anyone? We got to do that. Please note, I am very passionate about what I'm talking about. And if I don't get all my words right, I'm sorry. So what I was saying is that, yeah, pushing was great. I thought I was going to breathe through it. Because my uterus was going to contract, the baby was going to come out. No, not a chance. I was standing next to my bed with my hands on the bed, leaning against it. And my midwife was sitting on the floor. My husband was like next to me. And I remember hearing my midwife say, Kaitlin, you're going to meet your baby soon. And I looked at her and I was like, no way. I just felt like I had so far long to go. I had so much farther to go and it wasn't that painful yet. And she was like, you're going to meet your baby soon. You're pushing. And I was like, huh? And I was instinctively just starting to push because I had sensations that created this desire to push. So I started doing it, but you're so lost in this like spiritual realm of about to meet your baby in labor for 24 hours. Like you're like literally transforming into this like amazing creature who's now a mother. And, I didn't even know I was pushing. So anyway, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so excited. Because I'm like, I'm going to give her a standing up. That doesn't happen. I start cramping really bad. Like 2 minutes later, I'm like, I need to sit down. So this is like another segue. Oh no, we're like rushing to the end. Doesn't matter. I get on the bed and I'm standing, my legs cramping. I'm like, can I lie down? They're like, do whatever you want. So I get on the bed and I'm like, I do not want to be on my back. So I try to do all fours. All fours is really tiresome for me. So I'm like, I can't do all fours. The contractions hurt worse. So I try to do something else. Like I'm like laying on a pillow or something and it doesn't matter. I ended up delivering in what Jeff's my husband, a can opener. So I was side lying with like one knee up and one leg extended. And it was great. Baby came flying out.
I want to just add in though, you technically did it, like you pushed, but it was not not the way that I think a lot of people envision when they say push. Like you were truly facilitating the baby to come out because you knew how to elongate your pelvic floor. And I think there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's when, you like people are like popping blood vessels throughout their face because they're like using
intense. It's not, I mean, you've seen the video, but it's not, you're not like baring your teeth and like squinting your eyes and like growling. You're like moaning and pushing down and through. I remember the midwives telling me to push through, down and out and like through my stomach, which is like a weird thing. But when you're giving, it just makes sense at the time to just kind of like groan down and out. So I wasn't like, if you're watching this, you can see my hands, but you're not like clenching and like tightening up. You're like bearing down. And so that's how you're pushing, but it's not typical pushing as you're saying. You can describe it better than I can probably because you like actually know the anatomy of it. I'm just, doing what my body tells me to do.
I liked your description minus the bearing down. You kind of are, but what really seems to click with people, especially if they've done this when they were younger, is and I'll coach people through this in stages. Think about if you were trying to make your belly look pregnant right now, like you're pressing your belly out. So I start there And then I teach them, okay, go a little bit lower. Think lower, like lower belly instead of upper belly, and then pelvic floor. Because it's like you're actively elongating those muscles. But if you add breath, it becomes it's still powerful, but not as, I mean, some people, their pelvic floor muscles still tense. So we have to really work through that coordination. But it's so amazing whenever it clicks. It's like you're not tensing your abs in such a way that would show a six pack if that was a thing.
Yeah.
It is like down. You're just like
pushing down. Yeah.
You're like,
if
yeah,
you
down
have
through
a good birthing team, like they will tell you, like, I didn't know what I was doing. I saw you and I still didn't know how to push. I started doing it on my own. And then I don't know who was in the room that said that, like, cued me into it, and it just worked. So having a really good care team is super important for whatever birth you choose. Doesn't matter. You don't have to have a baby at home. You can do it at a hospital. Have a good birthing team. Get a doula. Have a midwife who knows you and your story and knows your wants.
You didn't say that your birth team said, take a deep breath, hold your breath for 10 seconds and push as hard as you can. You had specific details. I think the one thing that you mentioned earlier, like you didn't know how to push. You were doing it, but you weren't aware that you were doing it when I saw you. And then it just happened to come through, like you performed when you needed to perform. And that's the whole goal, right? I think that is as good, if not better, than whenever I teach people, hey, this is how you do it after they've done it wrong, because it's so easy to divert back, whenever you're tired, you've been up for 24 hours plus.
Yeah.
You're in pain, So yeah, I got to see the video and it was pretty miraculous. Now, if being that your baby flew out, the one risk of a fast, like, ejection of baby is if the arms or whatever are not in a good position, you could have more of a tear in that case. And we never really want a baby blowout, like what can happen if you like push as hard as you can. You definitely didn't have a baby blowout by any means. But some people do.
I felt like I was pushing as hard as I could. I remember this. So my second to last contraction, when the head came out, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, one more push until this baby comes out. Because I had seen so many home births where it's like head one push, body the next one. And that doesn't always happen. But for me, that's like what I was just envisioning. And so I remember trying to be patient and wait for the peak of the next contraction. So contractions aren't just like contraction, then they go away. They peak and then they go down. So you have like, if a contraction is a minute long, it's not a minute long of the same pain. The pain gets worse. I hate the term pain, sensation. It is uncomfortable and strong, and then it gets way, 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 way stronger, kind of holds there for a while, and then it kind of peters out. Like it's like a mountain. You know what I mean? So I remember like my pushes, I was waiting until the contraction was getting to the peak of the sensation, or at least like increasing significantly until I was pushing. And then that last contraction, I literally, like the second I felt it coming, I was like, okay, here we go. And I just pushed because I couldn't wait. I had no patience. And I was like, this thing's got to come out. And it's not like I did it too soon, but that is just instinctively what I did. And I just like, it was cool. It was great. Like I said, I want to do it again.
Well, soon. Right? I'm going to advise you at least wait 18 months, if not 2 years. Hey listeners, if you're feeling frustrated with your sex life, whether it's due to pain, lack of pleasure, or just feeling disconnected from your body, we want you to know that you are not alone.
That's right. So many people struggle with these issues in silence, but it doesn't have to stay that way. We've created the Healing Intimacy Program to help take you from pain to pleasure and restore confidence in your intimate life.
In this course, we dive deep into the physical, emotional, and even chemical factors that can be holding you back. And we'll give you the tools to transform your intimate experience.
If this resonates with you, head over to our website and join the waitlist. You'll be the first to know when the Healing Intimacy Program launches, and you can take the first step toward a sex life that's not just pain-free, but pleasure-filled.
Visit www.vaginadocs.com to sign up for the waitlist today. Your pleasure matters, and it's time to reclaim it. So, shifting gears. Now, one thing that I noticed at postpartum, like I assessed your abdominal wall, and your abdominal wall was in such great shape. Contrast that to, remember our very first visit when the way that you were engaging your core was just, that was really hard for you to change your initial strategy.
Yeah.
So tell us about now your journey of, okay, what was a game changer in terms of what you learned about your body during pregnancy and how that translated to you getting back to activity, well, being able to do the activity while you're pregnant, but then also postpartum. I didn't have to teach you a lot because you already knew it because we did it during pregnancy.
Yeah. So I saw you initially because I was having pain with intercourse and back pain in my first trimester. And so we had like 6 sessions then. And then later on, I think I came back for like 2 at the very end, just kind of as like a spot check. And you taught me in those first 6 sessions, you gave me a bunch of resources, a bunch of exercises to focus on. And I basically just like had a little routine. It was like a 10-minute routine. It was pelvic floor and connecting to my deep core. And I did it almost every morning before I would walk into this office. I would lay on the ground back there and I would do my pelvic floor routine before I got on my computer every single day. And I noticed immediately like improvement in all of my pain, my back pain, my hip pain, my joint pain, like all of it. It got so much better and it was a way to like maintain. And then if I didn't do it 2 days in a row, everything, went to shit because I wasn't maintaining that muscle that you helped me tone. So that was during pregnancy. And then immediately after, I was like, how soon can I connect to my pelvic floor? How soon can I do these exercises again? Because even though my pelvic floor was totally shot because I just had a baby, I was so nervous. You walk around, you feel like your butthole is going to fall off and you're just like so afraid to do anything because like you literally feel like things are just going to fall out. It's so crazy. But I did really well afterward. I started doing my pelvic floor therapy exercises again. And now I feel like I'm in a better place now than I was before I got pregnant because I used to suffer from really bad nerve pain in my proximal hamstring, which is, for those of you that don't know where that is, it is basically like your butt cheek, like up in your butt cheek. That's like between your glute and it's like the glute ham tie-in. So it's like right up in there. I used to have really bad nerve pain that was present there. And what we believe is that through my pelvic floor rehab and doing all of those and building my deep core and figuring out how to connect to my pelvic floor, I was able to gain more stability in my SI joint, which is the reason why I was having that nerve pain that was presenting in that area. So now I'm actually doing exercises I wasn't doing before I got pregnant because I was having such poor nerve pain. Like I couldn't sit here in this chair for an hour before I got pregnant. And now I don't even think about the nerve pain anymore. It's amazing. It's truly amazing. The best gift you gave me wasn't even like fixing my back pain. It was that, which is wild. And it's just like a testament that like, listen, you don't have to be pregnant to see Jocelyn. Like if you have back pain or if you have other issues, like you certainly like, and like, not that every single person could benefit from pelvic floor therapy, but if you have a missing link down there and there's some weakness, like just fixing that. And it can be 10 minutes a day.
I appreciate all the nice things that you're saying, but I do want to like put it back to you, Kaitlin. You were just such an eager learner, and I want to highlight learner, and you stuck with it. I think I'm just the guide. I teach you the gaps. I teach you how to sink into your body and use it in a different way. But ultimately, you did all the things. You were body aware to explain, like you're present enough in your body to tell me what's going on. And then being able to pair that with watching you move and assess different things, like that piece is so important. So people who are listening, like we're a team, it's not just me doing all the things. I'm bringing awareness to you and what gaps we should fill. But ultimately, like pregnancy doesn't have to be painful. Sitting with pain, whether you're pregnant or not, is not normal. And if it's not a musculoskeletal or a problem where whether a nerve is compressed or something, physiologically, we got to figure out what's the underlying driver. And I just think I've always believed in that kind of care, and I've created a practice where I could treat people that way versus, if you go somewhere else, if they're seeing 2-3 people within that half hour, you're not like, I know I couldn't approach someone's healthcare that in that amount of time. But to that explanation, Kaitlin, you were just such a great person to work with because you did the things, you stuck with it, you did the things that you needed to do.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
So I want to know what prompted you to get pelvic PT in the first place. I know you were having pain, but a lot of times people are like, let people think that they don't need it or they should wait till after having the baby. What are your thoughts on that? As unbiased as you can be.
I would get in as soon as you possibly can so you can do the work early before you're really pregnant, because by the time I was in my 3rd trimester, it was like I was already maintaining, and it was just allowing, like what we did in the beginning allowed my body to grow in a way that I wasn't getting I never experienced like more pain while I got bigger. Like my body just like through the changes my body was going through, and I'm lucky. Okay. Like I understand, like I'm nice and tall. That definitely is a part of it too. But because I did the groundwork early on, my body was able to grow comfortably, and I was able to still do the exercises that I was doing before I got pregnant. So I would get in as soon as you can. I honestly, I was having severe back pain, and I was like, I don't want to have this for the next 9 months, and pain with intercourse. And I knew you. So Jocelyn was like an old friend of mine. She went to the gym that my husband used to go to. So I knew her, and I always planned on like seeing her after I had a baby, right? I was always like, I'm going to go see Jocelyn like when I need postpartum. And then I, obviously followed her on Instagram, and I just was looking at these symptoms like, I don't need to have these for the next 9 months. I don't need to deal with this. So that's ultimately why I came in, is because I was like, wait, you're telling me that I could live comfortably and not hate being pregnant? I did hate being pregnant for other reasons, but the pain was not one of them. I felt good. My body felt really good.
Now, what are your thoughts? Like a lot of people have no idea what physical therapy is, let alone what pelvic floor physical therapy is. And the thought, it could be intimidating. How would you say pelvic floor physical therapy is intimidating? And how much of that related to you knowing me beforehand? Would you say that played any role? Like if you didn't know someone, would you be more nervous? How could you prepare someone going into it?
If you don't want to have internal work, you don't have to have internal work. Like it's as simple as that. Jocelyn is so good with people, and she's so like, listen, there's literally nobody in the state of Arizona that's more passionate about vaginas. And you can probably assume that from the title of this podcast, from her business name and all this. But like when I met Jocelyn, like I didn't know her at all, but she was like, she's so intelligent and she's so passionate about helping people with their ailments regarding the pelvic floor that I just trusted her with my care, and I was excited to go meet her. And if you're not ready for internal work first, that's okay. I'm definitely very open with my body. I don't mind. Like let's do everything you can to make sure that things are in the right place. But if you're not there, that's okay. But there's still things you can do to work on your pelvic floor without internal work first. And then if you need a couple of sessions to build that comfort, then do it. But it's just different like anything else, It's nothing to be afraid of. Like it's just another experience that you'll get in this life,
How would you say the work that we did differed than you going to see your midwife or your, a gynecologist?
Oh my gosh. I haven't seen a gynecologist in like 10 years. I'm so bad. Okay. Well, can't answer that one, but my midwife was really like my licensed provider who took care of my like biometrics. She was taking my blood pressure. She was monitoring my weight. She was listening to the baby's heartbeat. She was offering me a lot of emotional support through and through all 41 weeks of my pregnancy, and at the end I was meeting with her for an hour every single week. Every time I met with her, it was an hour. Her business is incredible. She has a team of midwives under her now, and her name is Morgan. She's in the Phoenix area, and maybe we can put her in the show notes or something, but it doesn't matter. She took care of me from a more like what an OB would do, I guess. And you really helped manage my symptoms. She was more of like taking measures, making sure things were going well, and also just like the emotional support was a big one. And then for you, it was like, you're really helping me be in charge of my body.
That's a good description. I'm glad we're talking about this now. So what were your visits like early on in your pregnancy with Morgan? And then how did those change going as your pregnancy progressed? Because I know it's a little bit different than seeing a traditional OB. They do the routine.
Yeah, I saw her. I think my first appointment was probably, I don't know, as early as 8 weeks. I don't know, maybe, I'm not sure. Every single one of my appointments with her was 60 minutes or even longer if we went over. And I went to her clinic, and she, towards the end of my pregnancy, actually did home visits for me, which was really nice because I was really uncomfortable with heartburn, and driving was the worst thing. So it was really nice to have her come to my house. She also did a home visit like in the middle of my pregnancy because she had to know what she was getting into for the birth. So that was really nice to have her in my home. And it was just really nice working with someone that I could text, like she offered tech support. So I could text her if I needed anything, and she would get back to me within like hours. And it was amazing. Like I've obviously never seen an OB during pregnancy, so I can't compare it to that. But I just have so many friends that just think that the care is lacking because they don't spend that much time with you, and you have to wait for 45 minutes in a waiting room, and then you see them for 10 minutes, and it's just kind of like, checking all the measurements that a normal midwife would, but the care just isn't really as in depth as you wish it was for, let's say, a first time pregnancy or even like your fifth baby. Sometimes you need more support. So I chose midwifery care because I knew I wasn't going to do a hospital birth, and she's licensed. Like, she'd go to school for how many years, so it's not like midwifery is really like a high level of care that you.
Mm-hmm. I remember when I was in my first job. So I was in my first 2 years of being a pelvic floor physical therapist, and I had gone to one of my patients' OB appointments. It was the most impersonal 10, 15 minutes. And I remember we waited much longer than the actual appointment. And here, I'm a healthcare provider. Like, I had work, and I had to take that whole afternoon off, and for like 10 minutes of just, and I went there, and remember, it was a male OB, and it doesn't matter male or female, but like, just like, why are you here? Well, this patient of mine was in a lot of pain, and I wanted to be that patient's advocate.
Yeah, good for you.
And nothing came out of it other than I knew that OB wasn't going to be at all supportive of, the questions that patient of mine wanted to ask. And I did. And he just like dismissed me. And I'm like, okay, I'm taking matters in my own hands. I was definitely a newer PT within my 2 years of practice. So I do things a lot differently now. And I recognize, like, okay, the pelvic floor care can't expect the OB. And how many times did your midwife do any pelvic exams? It's not often. And same thing with OBs throughout. So they're not going to know about your pelvic floor muscles. And that's not what they do. So that was an interesting, afternoon of my life. And I haven't done it since, but I definitely appreciate when I get to collaborate with midwives and even doulas, because certain doulas are just so phenomenal in helping the labor progress and help baby move through the birth canal. So I highly recommend my patients to consider an OB or a midwife doula team for their birth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we should touch on that briefly because I was not planning on having a doula. I was like, like I just like it's extra money that I don't feel like I need to spend. Do I really need a doula? I know they're great, but like my husband is very capable and is extremely good at what he can do. And I just thought I was like, yeah, if he just studies and if we just look up what to do, like we'll be fine. No. Hire a doula. It's worth the money. There is no way I could have had this baby naturally at home without my doula. She was so good at like helping watch the clock, making sure I was in the right positions to get that baby through the birth canal, just like you said. I mean, she helped move me around. She helped coach me through a lot of the process, and I'm so thankful for her. Her name is Patricia, and she was amazing. It's worth the money. And honestly, the reason I chose a doula was because I wanted Jeff to kind of like be here with me in my head. You know, he was like the emotional support team. He was like protecting the cave, right? He was like my messenger to like send the messages out to like those around me, you know, because like when you're in labor, like you are totally labor land is on. Like it's kind of like doing drugs. So it's kind of like a mushroom trip where like you only really see and feel and experience what you need to see and feel and experience. Everything else is off. Like literally parts of your brain shut down when you're in labor, which is wild. Parts of your brain shut off in order to give birth to a baby. So it's like it's just like this it's not whimsical. It hurts, but you really like, it's like you have tunnel vision and you can only like, you have this like one little portal out. And anyway, Jeff was my portal. So that's what I wanted him for. And I wanted my doula just to like tell me what to do, put me in what positions to be in, and like help work this baby out. And that's exactly what she did. She was amazing.
So important. Yeah. When you assume that your partner is going to be the captain in your movement, you're thinking wrong. Like straight up, you're wrong. I never say that to people, but
wrong.
Like just have your partner be there for you, as Kaitlin said, and not as the medical personnel to move your body.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, before we conclude the conversation, I want you to touch upon the challenges postpartum that you've run into in making sure you're doing, or you did your rehab. Like, I know what I will say is, and I think you can agree, the work that you did going into it greatly decreased what you needed to do after. And I try to tell people that all the time, but a lot of people have to learn on their own. But that being said, yeah, what can a new mom expect in the time that she could put into herself in rehabbing her body after having her baby?
That is a hard question because at first it feels like you have no time. You have zero time. You have no time. You have no time for pelvic floor therapy. You have no time for you. You have no time for this. You have no time for that. There's no time. Having a newborn is so time consuming. And it's the best thing ever because you have a newborn. It is really hard. There are certain things I did. Like, I think you helped coach me with that, where it was like, you know, every time you get out of bed, connect to your pelvic floor 5 times. And so I would do that, or I would try to do that. If I remembered, like every time I got up, I would connect to my pelvic floor 5 times. Or when I was breastfeeding, I would do like 3 sets of 4 or 5 or whatever. Because those were the only times that you're never idle when you have a new baby. And even now, you know, my baby's 5.5 months old. And even now it's like, I blocked off this hour in my day today, and my next time where it's just going to be me is like undecided. It's not on my calendar yet because I'm with the baby full time. And it's tough, but I will say, if you get like, I was kind of modifying, and I was choosing from what I was doing during my pregnancy. I kind of chose from that list of exercises to connect to my pelvic floor. postpartum, like day 2 through, up until now. And then I've just kind of added more exercises in. So it's really nice to have that foundation before your postpartum so that you don't have to worry about learning anything new. It's like, it's already there. You just have to implement it. So that was really helpful because that was like a foundation there. And then it's tough. I mean, for me, the other thing I did was some of your videos postpartum. The only way I could do it is because I have a really good childcare at my gym. I go to Mountainside and I can drop them off for 2 hours a day. So I was able to get in some like longer pelvic floor sessions only because I was able to like put him in the hands of like a caregiver. I know that's not possible for everyone. So that was helpful. But the last thing I want to say about that is like your body needs time to heal. So don't do too much too soon. I mean, try to do nothing. Try to do the least you possibly can postpartum. I think so many women, I'm going to say this for the second time in this conversation, women run the world. Like you run the world, and it's okay to not run the world for like 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's okay that the laundry's going to pile up. The dishes are going to be dirty. Your house is going to be a mess. Your husband's going to miss you. All of these things. It doesn't matter. Taking care of your body comes first because you need to heal. You literally just did something so incredible beyond any way I can describe it. And you need to heal. You need to do nothing. You need to snuggle your baby. You need to feed your baby. And that's it. That's all you need to do. Please take care of yourself because it's hard. It's so hard when you're a doer and you want the house clean and you want people to come over and you want all this stuff. And it's like, you are healing. Jocelyn just told me yesterday that I'm still healing. 5.5 months postpartum. She was like, you need more time to heal. And I was like, what do you mean? And it's like it's like a shock, but not a shock. And for the type of person I am, I have to hear that from somebody I trust because otherwise I'll be like climbing Mount Everest tomorrow. Cause I'm like, oh, I feel good. I feel strong. And it's like, you the baby. What did I say to you yesterday? I said, I'm so amazed at how long it's taken things to get back into place because I'm close in some areas back to where I was, but some areas are taking so long to get back to. And that area for me is my adductors. I didn't even know that your adductors had anything to do with your pelvic floor health, and that those would be affected when you had a baby. I remember immediately after having this baby, I like couldn't get the leg rest in from my nursing chair because my hamstrings were so weak. They couldn't like snap the thing back under. And I was like, what the hell's going on? I was doing like hamstring curls at who knows what 3 days ago. And now I can't even curl this like chair. Anyway, so my adductors are super weak and that's taking forever. And that's what Jocelyn said to me. She said, you still need time to heal. It's so crazy how like everything you do, everything goes to zero. You're at ground zero. Heal your body. If you're listening to this, don't do anything. You need to heal. Love, Kaitlin. That's it. Podcast over.
That's a great way to end. So I ask all my guests, what is the one piece of advice if you were to give another person, what's the one thing they could do to empower their pelvic health?
Oh my gosh.
Is it the last thing you said?
Oh man. Postpartum, yeah, heal. Don't do anything. Stay in bed for a whole week. That's my advice. Do not get up, only to pee.
Do not get up, only to pee your first week postpartum, and maybe poop too.
Yes.
Kaitlin, it's been so much fun chatting with you. Thank you so much for coming on Real Talk with the Vagina Docs. Until next time.